part of him was really enjoying it too. I think part of him was like, oh, this is interesting. We kind of played house for a day. It was very much like we were a couple, and like, you know, I was going along with my husband and his mother for her birthday. I mean, it was other than the age difference, which, you know, in gay world was nothing. He was very sweet about it.
Hello, my name is Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. This week, we are heading back to the Big Apple with Conor Kelly O'Brien, an actor, theatre maker, and creative arts organiser originally from Scranton, Pennsylvania. After a day of soul-zapping auditions, Conor found himself at 9th Avenue Saloon, a gay dive bar in Hell's Kitchen. It was here, whilst commiserating over an alcoholic beverage or two, that Conor met a man, got pleasantly distracted, got frisky, and then, well, you'll have to listen to the episode to find out. But, yeah, definitely one of the more interesting one-night stands I've heard about. So when did you move to New York?
It was sort of an on-again, off-again relationship. Not unlike most of my actual relationships. 20, when I was 20, so 9 years ago. 2021. Yeah, I am approaching the dreaded gay age of 30 this summer.
Yeah,
I'm 29.
Let's not talk about that in that way. Like,
well, you still have a few years, right?
No, I'm not even going to buy into all that ageist bullshit.
No, it's nonsense. I will tell you, it has nothing to do with my virility or my sexuality. I'm better looking than I think I've ever been. I know what I'm doing more. It's just the expectation of like, oh God, I'm 30. I should be doing more. It's not like it's 30 is great. It's like, oh God, it's me being 30. It's not actually being 30. Do you know what I mean? Like the idea of like, when you're 25, it's like, oh, honey, you'll get it together. You're only 25. When you're 30, even though it's a great age, you're still young. There's sort of an expectation of like, you're 30. You should know what you're doing then.
Yeah, but if you didn't just fuck for the entire decade of your 20s, then you kind of wasted your 20s.
Oh, then I must have, because
oh,
I was we'll talk. I made up for lost time. Don't get me wrong. But I was a very sexual late bloomer. Yeah. I mean, I did stuff, but I didn't do stuff until probably 23.
What? So you just touched it and then ran away?
No. I mean, I did more than that, but I'm
not sure I know.
I can say whatever I want, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there's no rating on this queer podcast, right? Besides 5 stars. So I was raised in a cult. That's not a joke. I was raised in a cult. Particularly a cult that many might be sort of familiar with in a tertiary way. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
And so being queer and gay, let alone, was, not an option. Although I will say, ironically, my departure from that faith had nothing to do with I think my sexuality was a low simmer underneath it. Mm-hmm. My departure was more so just logic. I actually would have been willing to repress sexuality if I had to. It was just that I'm not believing any of this. And on top of it, I feel like there's something going on. It's like that pre-diarrhea feeling you have. And it was like, I feel like something's going on down here that I have to express. No, so I didn't kiss another person of my gender identity until I was 18. I was 18 when I first made out with another guy.
And had you left the Jehovah's by then?
Not entirely.
Okay.
I was sort of halfway out the door by that point. It's a process, which is a whole conversation. I was like, halfway out the door. And then I wasn't 23 until and it's.
But then, so what were you
that's when I consider-
doing? What were, like, you moved to New York?
Really passive aggressive hand jobs. You know,
So wait, so what do you mean by passive aggressive hand job? Do you mean like a begrudging?
just like, oh, I'm loving this, and like just like not knowing what I'm doing. I was very much. It took me until I was 21, 22 to put my lips on a dick. I mean, completely sexually repressed. Didn't know what I was doing. Didn't understand my own body, let alone somebody else's. And then I just made up for lost time in the around 23, 24, I would say I emerged from my sexual repressed cocoon. And then it was just game on. I love Muppets. It was Muppets Take Manhattan if the Muppets were just, sexually repressed gay guys.
Only Miss Piggy is. So, okay. So let's just pause for a moment and then go back to moving to New York. So you moved when you were around 20. What was the game plan?
Become famous by 25. So,
okay.
Needless to say, I'm a few years behind that plan. There really wasn't one. It was just go experience. I knew I wanted to work in theater. I actually was when I first moved to New York, I was living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. I was working for next to nothing, an organization called The Living Theater. The Living Theater, founded by Julian Beck and Judith Malina, may they rest in peace. And the theater was on Clinton Street in the Lower East Side. I would work in the theater, which was like a small black box underneath the first floor on the basement level. Mm-hmm. Met so many amazing people. I did a lot of like administrative work, and then I actually wound up living on the stage of the theater for about 3 months. And so that, I would use, there was a bathroom downstairs connected to the dressing room. So I had a bathroom, a shower, a little closet I could store things in. I would wait until the shows were over. They knew this. This wasn't like I was hiding it. I'd wait until the shows were over. I had like a makeshift cot / sleeping bag thing that pulled out. And I would literally sleep in this theater alone every night.
Wow.
And I had until that no one would be down there until like noon. So I had until noon, and then I'd leave and go do whatever job I was doing, whatever auditions I was on, whatever productions I was working on behind the scenes or as an extra in. And then it was an incredible experience. I wish I had been a little more liberated at that point in my life, because there was a lot of opportunities sexually, illicit drug use. That was, to the point where I don't even know the offers I was probably given at that point, because I was so unaware of flirtation and so unaware.
I think my mind went to a different place. I was thinking like, oh yeah, you could take the costumes and do role play. You could like hang from the stage.
Oh my God, that's leaps and bounds. I'm talking about like, someone would be like, hey, do you want to go get a drink tomorrow? And I would be like, no, I have drinks here. Do you need help? Completely the dumbest, poor little child you've ever seen. Everything from, drugs to sex to, spontaneous cross-country road trips to work opportunities. I don't want to paint this heat. It wasn't, they were lovely people, and I've already done it. I probably should pull back on that a little bit. They were wonderful, professional, very accommodating. No one ever made me feel uncomfortable in that space and in that community, but I definitely was a bit of a square, a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, or lack thereof.
Ching.
And yeah, thank you.
But then, okay, is theatre this thing that's just always driven you, and you've just been certain that that's what you want to do? Yeah, I think it was. I will say I was never, the little queer, Broadway-bound baby. I knew that, besides the fact that I can't sing that well, at least, beyond carrying a tune in an ensemble, I just knew there was something about acting, like legitimate acting, that just really appealed to me. And I guess, actors will tell you this isn't true, and they'll like to come up with some self-gratifying response. Anyone who doesn't like being themselves relishes the opportunity to get to play other people.
I mean, and any child likes to play dress up and likes to play characters. And then once that continues well into your adulthood, there's a psychosis behind it, which is fine. I started taking acting classes since I was really little. I mean, really little. And then my first legitimate theater experience, I think I was 12, 13. It was like a really good, like American theater chestnut piece to be your first play. And I auditioned. I got the part of George. Totally gave me a complex for all future roles that wouldn't be so easy and wouldn't be so accessible. But it's cliche, but I fell in love with it. And then my first paid film role, I think I was 16, 17, and it was like this weird independent film thing. I remember I got $100 check and I thought I was fucking loaded. I mean, I thought I was like, my shit didn't smell. Fuck all of you. I am brilliant. And I am, I think I held onto that check so long. I don't think I even cashed it. I was just so like enamored by the concept of money and it's mine. And I did it by acting.
Quick sidebar. If someone gives you a check nowadays, are you just really pissed off?
Just angry?
I'm just like, oh, great. Now I'm going to have to go to the fucking bank. Thanks a fucking lot.
No, trust me. I will never get anyone out there wants to send me a check. Or find me on Venmo at Conor Kelly O'Brien.
Well, I mean, the Venmo, that's fine. I like that goes into your account. You don't have to do anything. Checks, you have to like go and do something with them.
Do you not have remote deposit? You can't take a picture?
Oh, maybe you do. I don't know.
Okay. That's what I do.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, fine. Okay, fine. Fine. Checks aren't that annoying. So you had the acting bug. And so was New York kind of like this mythical beast for you?
No, because Scranton's you can do, from my apartment in the city, because it's right over the bridge in Harlem, you could do door to door 2 hours. To me, it's just as mythical as it was when I was 12 years old, the first time going. The first time going with active memory. But no, New York has always seemed, at least to me, very attainable, very understandable. Not necessarily breaking into that industry. That's still a beast that I don't quite have a handle on. As much as I think I do and then realize I have no idea what I'm doing.
Okay. And then, so what were those first days in New York like then? Was that your first time living away from home?
Was that my first time living away from home? Yes. Yes, that was I would say that was my first time really being away from home. It was weird, but I mean, I had such an unusual, unique experience. Most people, I didn't go to a traditional 4-year college. So for most kids, it's, you go away to college and you live in a dorm where where your meals are provided and you have a roommate and you're a full-time student and you join clubs. I mean, I was working right out of high school, before high school. So I mean, living on this floor of a theater and being in this really, very, intense neighborhood in Brooklyn and, emerging onto the gay dating scene, not knowing anything about myself, which I mean, I feel like most people, especially in the queer community, and I could be wrong, but most people of my generation of, the kind of young, middle-aged millennials now, have a sort of, there's stepping stones, right? And for some people it's, their first experience maybe was with someone in high school, or it was, their freshman year of college. And for me, everything sort of was equally delayed. And then the most insane turned up to 10 experiences that people in their 40s have never had.
Are we talking gay people in their 40s? Or are we talking straight people in their 40s?
That's a good question. I meant straight people in their 40s.
Okay. I mean, that could be anything. That could be like sitting on a cake.
That's true. I don't know if you've had this experience, but, I talked to some of my straight friends, and for them, like a threesome is like, oh my God, maybe someday I'll attain that unimaginable goal. And it was just like, oh my God, I'm so tired of them. Like, I think like, to be fair to straight people, yes,
which is not really what I do often, organizing a threesome, it's a bit more complicated.
They've had such a hard time with it.
Let's lay off straight people, I like
to say there is a difference though between people who are straight and people who just happen to be heterosexual. There is a very big difference in my opinion.
Okay, break it down for me and then I'm going to go back to my threesome point.
Straight to me is you are the most vanilla, white, boring, never thought outside of your world. I know plenty of, cisgender dudes that are the most amazing, brilliant people in the world who just unfortunately happen to be heterosexual. And they say they were born that way, so I'm going to take their word for it. I like to think there is, in my opinion, when you call someone, someone like, is he gay or straight? Oh, he's heterosexual. Oh, okay. That's just your sexuality, and it's all good. If you're straight, to me, that's equivalent of saying you're basic, you're boring. In my book, it's like, oh, stop being so straight.
So then heterosexual people,
yeah,
like I feel as though it is a bit harder to arrange a threesome, because if you're like all of the same gender and you all fancy that gender, then it's like, oh, okay, like I fancy everyone that's involved in this threesome. But if you're like heterosexual and there's two men and a woman, let's just say for simplicity's sake, then like if you're one of the men, then you only fancy one person in that threesome.
I mean, they have a name for it. They literally call it the Devil's Three-Way. I mean, it is. I don't know if that expression has transcended the Atlantic Ocean, but when I was, but here in the States, if you're a straight, a bunch of straight guys, it's like, yeah, I had a Devil's Three-Way once, and that means it was you, another guy, and a woman, and it's like you are so lucky enough to have any two human beings willingly, capitulate with you intimately. You disgusting little cretin! How dare you call it like the Devil's anything?
What? So what? Like because it's awful.
Because in a straight guy's mind, a cisgendered straight guy's mind, a three-way is him and two women just wanting him profusely, just wanting that that mid-level insurance agent dick, and I just want to know how many Phantom Menace promotional pillows you still have on your bed.
And it's a very negative connotation. It's not like, yay, the devil.
No. No.
Okay.
There's no hailing Satan in the straight community. No, not like devil's food cake, like it's so rich and delicious. No, like taboo. Like, oh no, you had a devil's food hiss.
I knew this straight guy who had a devil's three-way. I'm going to use that term because I've just learned it. And he was like, okay, well, I'm going to throw myself into this, and sucked off the other guy that was in the three-way, thinking like, well, this is just what you do. And then the other guy just like didn't touch him for the rest of the night, and he felt really rejected.
No, most don't. At least from the ones I've talked to. For them, it's sort of like, I really want to be with this woman, and this is what she wants. Or sometimes it's like a married couple, and they willingly agree to bring a third party in, which is, if all parties are consenting, more power to you. And I think I know a married couple that, love, to this day, they love to invite someone in. I guess they would be polysexual, polyamorous. I guess I don't necessarily think there's any romance in that particular relationship. I think it's just for fun.
So swingers.
Yeah, well, swingers to me indicates that you're like trading off. They only will play together with a third person brought in. But I mean, and again, all power to them. But for them, it's like, yeah, we brought another woman in, and I made out with her on the bed while my husband watched. And it's like, wow, Deborah, good for you. That's incredible. And I don't want to sound callous, but I mean, for some people, that's a huge deal. And you know what? More power to you. For me, that's like, I literally just like, and like,
so are you like straight shaming?
Then you did. No, I'm not straight shaming. I am straight taken aback. I am straight up straight taken aback. I wonder if we can make that happen straight up. Like reframe that, like instead of it meaning like for sure, definitely, it's like, oh, straight up. Like meaning like that's the most heterosexual thing I've heard. Like, oh wow, straight up.
I feel like that's murky territory.
Yeah.
Like we've just kind of stopped them from saying that's so gay about things they don't like. We don't want to kind of like start that war again.
Oh, that's true. That's so straight. That's so heterosexual. Yeah, that's true. I don't
But
know.
yeah, I think like if you're in a threesome, if you agree to it, you just need to throw yourself in. Like you can't be like, oh, I'm not going to touch
Yeah,
that
why not?
person, or I'm not going to. You just like fuck it, like who cares? Just go for it. That's my advice.
Right. I mean, to be fair though, are you telling me you've never had a threesome with? And I don't want to assume whom you are only attracted to, but you've never had a queer threesome and there wasn't one person?
Oh
that you
yeah,
were
no,
like,
yeah,
I particularly
absolutely. But
prefer
but
you.
I'm like, I'm gonna make sure your experience is fun. So yes, you can suck my dick.
Yeah, because you're such a humanitarian.
But that's like, yeah, like I think that that's just really iffy when people do that. Like, regardless of your orientation, when you like, well, go into it and then you're just like, oh, I'm just going to focus on this one person. It's like, nah, man, nah, those aren't the rules.
I have seen that happen. I have experienced that happening though with cisgendered gay married men couples
Cisgender
whom I
gay
have been
men.
for
Okay, sorry. Just,
whom I have had. I've learned the game. I've learned the art of this game is specificity. So yeah, no. That sometimes, not always, but sometimes there is one person in that relationship who really wants this, and the other person who's just going along with it to appease said other person, and you can just tell it's like,
yeah, that is just the most
so happy to
awkward
be here.
thing. It's like, it's just.
It's so uncomfortable because then you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
because then you feel like an interloper.
And the thing that I always do is I mean, this is a theme in my life, but I always overcompensate. So I'll pay more attention to the person who's not interested and then just end up feeling.
It's like when it's like having a really boring, it's like having a conversation with someone and there's one person that's really bored and you can tell and you're like,
Yeah.
but no, but tell me, Kyle, like.
So what do you
happened
think
on
about that?
No,
Yeah.
no, but tell me what happened on your, what happened, oh my God. And then when you got your accounting internship, did they provide the pens or did you have to bring the pens from home? And like, you're trying to find common ground and they're like, just finish this.
Yeah. And I just go into people pleasing mode. Damn it.
Yes. Yes, completely. And to an extent, you don't want anyone to feel bad. There's a difference between people pleasing.
No, but like, and this is the thing, like so if you're a couple and you go into a threesome and one of you's into it and one of you isn't into it, like if you're the one that's not into it, just like go and make a cup of tea and fuck off.
It's the most British answer I've ever heard to what to do if you're not enjoying a threesome. That was not a British accent. I don't know what that was, but
Well, that like yeah, that's it. Like, don't just be there and like just bring the mood down. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Anyway, we have not even started talking about the
they haven't
venue.
even gone. No. Well, just
So shall we mosey on down?
let's mosey on down.
Where do we start?
Oh, where do we start? So I'm living on the stage of the Living Theater, discovering who I am, what I want out of life, my sexuality, my worldviews, my religion, literally everything. I mean, I was already out of the religion at that point, but there was still a lot. The thing about cults is that it's not what you believe, it's how you believe and how you think that it really impacts you. So I was still unlearning that and, kind of trying to shed some of that judgmental energy and mindset I had. And so I started frequenting a couple of gay and queer bars in the city, and one in particular that I really, really liked, not because it was even really close to anything, but it was in Hell's Kitchen, the 9th Avenue Saloon, which just closed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic less than a year ago. I was devastated to see that, and I really enjoyed it because it was a bar that happened to be queer, and gay friendly. I was never a huge fan personally of like really loud nightclubs or, I'd rather go to a pub that happens to be a really fun gay bar. You could actually have a conversation. There was really good diverse music on the jukebox. The drinks were affordable. It was in Hell's Kitchen, so it was very accessible to the theater district. And one night after a really particularly bad string of auditions, just one after another that I didn't even get seen for because they were like, everyone, we've seen 300 people today. We're not seeing anybody else. Oh. After waiting like 4 hours, I know. And just like, Charlie Brown music, like walking back to the subway. And I decided I'm going to go in for a drink. I went in and sat down and I was just so miserable and being so hard on myself. And I kept a notebook and I still do I would like document what I thought about auditions, what I wore, who was there, common other actors I would run into, very meticulous notes. And I just remember looking down at my notes and sort of an out-of-body experience, just rereading my notes from the day. And I was just so hard on myself. I mean, there was nothing constructive. There was nothing positive. It was just like, you suck. You're terrible. You're a terrible actor. No one likes you. What are you doing? Go back to Scranton. Like, blah, 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 blah. To the point of just like, I think almost to an extent, I wanted to be self-pity. Like I needed that feeling. And then, a gentleman comes over, and I'm not going to do an Irish accent because
no, do it. It won't
be good.
Do it.
No.
Come on.
It's so bad. I'm not an accent. I can do dialects and accents if I have a coach for a while. I can't do it. I really can't. It's so bad. It was like he came over and he was like,
do it.
I'll do it. I'll do what it sounds like to me, because he's basically like the Lucky Charms character. And he just came over and was like, "Oh, can I buy you a drink?" Like it literally sounded that high pitched. It was so bad. It was like, "Oh, like everything just sounded like that inflection." I know that's not true. He actually had a very deep, masculine, brogue. But it was like, how you do? He was like, "Are you all right, love?" And that's what he said. It was, "Are you all right, love?" Because I could just, I don't know if I had a black aura, like a dark aura around me, but I was just like, oh my God. And he said, "Can I buy you a drink?" And I said, yes. And for the purposes of this story, we'll call him Matthew.
Matthew? No, come on, something more Irish.
No, his name was Matthew. I was doing a bit, sir.
Okay. Well, can't we just call him something more Irish? Seamus. Can we just call him Seamus?
Well, my name's Conor Kelly O'Brien. Nothing more.
Well, yeah, and so why can't you do the accent?
I don't know. I could. I'm not good on the spot. He was also a Northern Irish accent, which is a very distinct. Yeah. That's so. A Dubliner accent is a little more generic in a way. No one from Dublin come at me for that. But he was so you could barely understand a word he was saying. So he asked to buy me a drink, and I said yes. And I was already, through a friend, sort of heading towards a whiskey lover's palate, and he just was jumped on that. And he said, "What's your name?" I said, "Conor." "Oh my God." And then he's like, "What's your last name?" "O'Brien." "Oh my God." He was super charming and handsome, and he made me feel confident again. And, I was being chatted up. And as I mentioned previously, I had not had a great track record with healthy relationships as an adult. And at that point, I was young, and I was very young for my age. And he asked to take me home. And I pondered it. And I will say he was never bossy. He did not feel predatorial. He was older. He was 31, 32, so he was, another, 10, 11 years my senior. But he was very charming and very hospitable and very patient. And we made out. And I truthfully mean this. We didn't have full penetrative sex. I don't remember exactly what we did because we were both quite intoxicated. And back then, it was like 3 drinks and I was gone.
Well, okay. So did you make out in the bar?
Yes, we did. We made out in the 9th Avenue Saloon. The bar, to the point where I will say, and again, this is just another testament to why it's so important to have good queer spaces, because he went to the bathroom and the bartender, who had been kind of keeping an eye on me throughout the night and knew that I was having a rough day, came over to me and was like, "Honey, are you okay? Do you want to do this? Do you like him? Are you just having a bad day?" And I remember very distinctly said to me, "Someone else isn't going to make you feel a bit better about yourself." And he said, if you want to have fun, girl, you go have fun. But he was like, don't. It was like this little fire plug, twink, guy who was probably 45, like a guy who, those guys that have the short little fire plug bodies of a 45-year-old bodybuilder, but the face of a 19-year-old. And he was he's like, "Don't go there if you don't want to go there." He's like, "You do what you want to do. You could sit right here. I'll make you something to eat and sober you up." So protective and so genuinely concerned. And I was okay. I knew what I was doing. But I remember even in the moment being like, this would have never happened at a straight bar, right? And I don't mean that straight bartenders don't look out for other people, but no male bartender was going to look out for a 21-year-old guy who was about to go have sex. There just wouldn't have been this concern and recognition that, this might not be exactly what I want. And maybe, you know, there is something to this age difference that should be considered. I was fine, but I distinctly remember, and to the day they closed, I went in and tipped that person in particular as much as I possibly could. They left a few years ago. I don't know where. Shout out to Billy, wherever he is now.
But okay, so okay,
yeah.
I mean, I'm starting to get a bit worried about this story now since Billy's looking out for you.
No. It wasn't so much that like I'm drinking and going to make out with some guy and was really making out with him. It was more so like he saw how devastated I was when I came in. And I think it was more so like you're making your decisions based on want and fun and safe sex, not because you're like, it was more of an emotional concern than it was like a safety concern. Wow. But it was so lovely and so genuine. And I remember being in that moment and being like, because I was so new to this world, being like, oh, thank you. I'm fine. You know, I then proceeded to drink quite a bit more, and we both did. We went back, and I mean, to the point where neither of us was going to, not much was going to happen, because we both had been drinking a lot of whiskey. And he had this beautiful, beautiful apartment in Tribeca, which is sort of like the financial district far downtown, like where the World Trade Centers were and that area. And I just remember waking up in his bed, the biggest bed I've ever seen in my life. I mean, one of those like 2 king-size beds put together.
Amazing.
It took up like 8, I mean, luxurious. Like, right? Like very like 80s Wall Street, like broker. And like, you know, I'm going to walk out in like one of his oversized like dress shirts, like that kind of feeling. That's not what happened. I woke up like 90% in the same clothes I went to bed with. And I just remember like, I just heard like screaming happening from the kitchen. And at first I was so tired and hungover. I thought that it was like just a TV or he was listening to the radio. And it wasn't until and it was a big bedroom, but when you walked out of the bedroom, you pretty much were in the kitchen, like right when you walked out. And I ran into him and his mom, who he had failed to mention was coming over that morning because it was her fucking birthday.
So who was screaming then?
He and his mother.
Both of them, okay.
He and his mother's fighting. She was saying, like, you don't care about me, and you went and hooked up with yet, and, you know, did you bring back some other whore? I mean, just was going off on. I remember she distinctly said, you know, I'm not giving her a pass on this. I'm just going to say it's the truth of what happened. She said, at least tell me it's a woman this time. And I just was like in the doorway, like, oh shit. You know, which is not cool, there's no excuse for that. You know, she was angry and and she was clearly trying to get his goat. And then she just looked at me and didn't break 1 ounce of her rage. It wasn't like she saw me and went like, became uncomfortable, embarrassed. And she's like, well, what's your story then? Like just came over to me, like just like trotted over. And
so she had an accent as well. So why don't you do her accent? Her
accent would be the like, because she was just the highest pitch. She was this little stout little woman, so pretty, like this pretty face, a bigger plus size woman, but very short. You know, very much in contrast because he was like broad shouldered and very tall. They were just like them yelling at each other. I'm sorry, it was the funniest thing. And they were just so like, one of them would make a joke and they both laugh and then they'd get right back into the fight. And then I was just talking, and then all of a sudden, I just start like shaking, and I'm like, because like I suddenly had this feeling of like I'm in trouble, which for no good reason, it's like I'm in trouble. And she instantaneously, just as quickly as she snapped at me, she got real quiet and felt really bad, and she's like, "Why don't I make you a cup of tea? Go sit down on the couch." And then I went down and sat on the couch. He went in the shower, and we just talked. And
so you didn't just like find a cupboard to hide in?
I wanted to. I just wanted to disappear. I just wanted to like sink into the ground and melt like the Wicked Witch of the West. But she was like, no. And she asked me, "What's your name?" And she had the same thing. She you know, heard my Irish name. She's like, "Oh, well, at least you're Irish." Which, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there as well. But in the moment, I was fine with just anything. I was like, and I just like, I made a joke like, well, if it's any consolation, my father hates the British. And like, she laughed and thought it was funny. It was just so uncomfortable.
Hey, let's bond over xenophobia.
Completely. I was just like, at that point, I was just like, I'll say what everyone, Enron, everyone at Enron deserved it. I don't know what you want to say. No, but she was she was, you could tell, later in the day, she apologized for the comment about, at least you're not a woman. At least it wasn't, at least, please tell me at least it's a woman. She did apologize for that, which I thought was very big.
But you just said later in the day. So that means you didn't leave as early as you could.
No. I spent over 24 hours with this family. Including my time with him the night before into the next day. Because we went back, it was not late. We went back to his apartment at like 10, and I didn't get back to my apartment until midnight the following day, if not later.
In your stanky clothes from the night before.
In my stay, I showered, and he loaned me some. I kept my pants on because he was like a big dude, like a broad-shouldered guy. He gave me like a t-shirt that just was a little like one size too big, and I just Febreze my jeans over the back of something. And she said, what had happened was they were supposed to meet in the lobby of his apartment building. She lived somewhere else in the city. They had moved as a family back in the 90s when he was still young, but he went back to stay with his father a lot in Ireland. So he had still maintained, his Irish culture and his accent, but she was born and raised there. She had stayed here though. I forget what she did. And she lived in Brooklyn, I think. But it was her birthday. And she, coming up soon, it was sometime in May. I remember that, sometime in May.
Well, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Fiona. And she wanted him to take her out to like a brunch, and they were going to have a whole day of it. It was a Saturday. And she was just like, I was looking forward to this, and he and I haven't spent time together in so long, and my other children live back overseas and blah, blah, blah. And I felt so horrible. I'm like, no, he's awful. Like, we just bonded over like hating him. I'm like, no, that's awful. He should never have. No, I completely sold him under the bus. She's like, do you two know each other? I'm like, no, he picked me up last night. It's complete. I mean, I was just anything to appease this woman because I just felt so. I don't know what my name is. So I went to the shower. I'm like, just please let me shower. I got showered. They were having coffee. They kind of made up. So mind you, they were supposed to meet at like 9 a.m. in the lobby. It was like almost noon because she was like pounding on his door. He finally woke up at some point. I mean, we slept in quite late. By the time we left the apartment, it was almost noon. So brunch became lunch. And I said, okay, I walked outside thinking like, okay, we're done here. I'm like, he gave me a shirt to borrow. He was like, just keep it. Don't worry about it. Because I was just so sweaty and disgusting. I had to put something else on. I'm like, thank you so much. I am so sorry. I'll call you later. Enjoy your birthday. Happy birthday. So this is coming from the kid who was raised a Jehovah's Witness where premarital sex wasn't allowed. Being gay wasn't allowed. Fucking celebrating a birthday wasn't allowed. And here I am, on the streets of New York, like saying goodbye to this guy and his mom being like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And she grabbed my hand. She said, I thought you were going to come with us to lunch. And it was that thing where I was just like, okay. So I borrowed his phone because my phone was dead. I thankfully knew the person's number. I called the person at the theater. I'm like, hey, they didn't even notice I wasn't there. I was like, I didn't come home last night. I'm fine. I'm not coming. I mean, my job was so much basically a labor of love. They were very chill. They're like, oh, okay, take the day off. You're fine. I was like, okay. So we went to lunch at a beautiful restaurant somewhere in Tribeca. He picked up the tab, and literally we just spent the whole day together. We went to the movies. We went shopping, and because apparently on her birthday, they don't buy gifts. They just take each other shopping and get them whatever they want. And they are not fabulously wealthy, but I mean, to have a 2-bedroom Tribeca apartment, this gentleman had to be doing quite well for himself because he had an office and his bedroom. And we were shopping, and do I still have it? It's somewhere I'm in Scranton now. It's probably in a box somewhere. He bought me this beautiful sweater that I was eyeing up the whole time. We were at Macy's near Herald Square. He's like, do you want to get it? He's like, I'm in the buying mood. And I was like, no. I was just sort of like trying something on because I was bored while they were shopping. And she's like, no, let him get it for you. He's got money to spare, doesn't he? And like, she was the sweetest. She went from instantaneously like being so angry and upset to instantly recognizing this 21-year-old kid doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He's probably so scared and like worried. And I was hungover most of the day. And we were together, went back to his apartment, just hung out. They just talked. And then we had to have dinner. And what did we do after that? I think we just went and got drinks. I think we just bar hopped. It was the loveliest. I don't know how many people out there have had, love affairs that have been like a 24-hour cycle where like You meet the person, you hang out the next day, you really like each other, you spend the whole day together and then never talk to each other again. It was very much that, except I personally enjoyed spending time with his mom more than him. He was lovely. He was very lovely, but she was just so, so sweet. I have her email address. I haven't spoken to her in a couple of years. Very truthfully, she could be dead. She could be...
What, so you kept in touch with her?
Yeah. She and I email. We email. I am going to send her this episode. This would be my introduction to... she could not have been more lovely. I told her about, believe it or not, that's not the worst date I've ever had. I told her everything from crying when I was 18 years old, walking home in a Mr. Humphreys costume from Are You Being Served, to being dumped halfway through a first date on 8th Avenue because we accidentally crashed a funeral and it was uncomfortable. And then this one won. This one definitely won for the best ending. It was so lovely and so, so sweet. And I really appreciated, she said some what we would now call problematic things. But she said them from anger, and she acknowledged that she was wrong. And most importantly, she was just a human being, and she was so compassionate and lovely. And they invited me out the next day. They're like, do you want to come over for dinner tomorrow night? And I could tell that she...
And you said no. You said no, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and then I could tell that he was like... The invitation wasn't coming from him either. She'd be like that, and I could tell he was like, I brought home a 21-year-old from the 9th Avenue Saloon one time. There was no ring was purchased, no dowry has been paid. The bands have not been read. She was just so sweet. She was so sweet. I think she did want me. She had since expressed that had I been a little older, she really would have pushed for us to date. She said, you were young and you had some things to learn. And I just remember, I got read by this old Irish woman. And it wasn't that I wasn't good enough for her son. She's just like, oh, he fucking sucks. He fucking sucks, she would say. And they were so sweet, and they had such a wonderful dynamic. We kept in touch. Have not spoken probably about 2 or 3 years.
I'm really struggling to understand everyone's motivation here, apart from maybe yours. Maybe yours I can get on top of. I can be like, okay.
Mine was just just getting to the next moment. Okay.
Yeah. So you were kind of swept up in being polite and yeah.
Yes. At first I was just being polite, and then it was like, do you want to come to lunch? And I'll be honest, I was hungry, and I knew he was going to pay for it, and I was like, okay, this. And I very much knew from an early age, before, when I was 15, 16, even if I didn't know what was going on, even if I was a little afraid, even if I was super repressed, I knew to always, as long as you're being safe, always see a story through. Always.
I mean, if you hadn't, we wouldn't be here today.
I know. How would my career live without the appearance on this prestigious
Exactly.
My motivation was always one of my dearest friends, Simone, who's also one of my writing partners. She's an amazing performer, director, costumer, based in Brooklyn. There's a running joke that one of my favorite quotes of hers is, "I've only ever wanted a weird night," or all I've ever asked for. Very sincere. All I've ever asked for is a weird night. And it's so true, and I stand by that. I recognize it's a privilege, and I recognize that's a little almost narcissistic to say that in a way, but I do love a really unique experience.
Why is that narcissistic?
Because, when I say, oh, it's fun to be adventurous, I'm being adventurous in a very safe way. For the most part, I have done things that were horribly stupid and horribly dangerous.
That's the next episode, right?
Yes. That one, there's one in particular that I will tell you off the record, could not discuss because it would literally put people in jail. Well, one of them already is in jail. My motivation was to see the story through, not be rude, get that free lunch. And then over lunch, I just genuinely bonded with this woman. And then in part, the man I went home with so much. I just genuinely adored them. And the 9th Avenue Saloon was such a comfortable, fun space to meet.
But okay, and so at the end of the day, So your motivation, I understand. Her motivation, maybe there's a little bit of guilt. Maybe there's like something going on.
I think there was a bit of motherly concern because I don't know what he told her when I was in the bathroom. I don't know what her feelings were. I think it's that thing that we all have, right? That when you're really, really angry and you explode, and then you instantaneously feel regret, even though she had some justification for being that angry and upset at her son. There was no, and lashing out at me was, well, understandable, not necessary. I think she was just a kind, generous, welcoming person who then happened to get caught up in a bad moment, who then felt the need. And he was just trying to appease her. So, I mean, out of the three of us, his motivation and needs he was just the walking wall.
And this is so I kind of get him like just like not rocking the boat. Anything that mum says, I'm going to go along with because she's already pissed off. Don't want to piss her off anymore. Right. But I would then just try and get rid of you as quickly as possible. I wouldn't be like, let's hang out the whole day. I'd be like, right, well, we've had brunch. Fuck off.
Which I would have been fine with. I would have been fine if he said, you're supposed to go and you have to leave. I'd be like, see you on the one train, bitch. Bye. Like, I'd be fine with that. I'm kidding. I didn't live off the one train then. He was so sweet and kind and generous about it. I think part of him was really enjoying it too. I think part of him was like, oh, this is interesting. We kind of played house for a day. It was very much like we were a couple and like, I was going along with my husband and his mother for her birthday. I mean, it was other than the age difference, which, in gay world was nothing. He was very sweet about it. By the end of the night, there was definitely like when are you going home? Energy. And he could have left any time. I was just having a blast with Fiona. Matt and I have since run into each other once. At the 9th Avenue Saloon, actually. Ran into each other again. And he was chatting up probably some other 21, 22-year-old at the time. And we just made eye contact. And we hadn't seen each other in like years, like 2 or 3 years at this point. I just remember looking at him saying, oh my God, hi, how are you doing? And walked away. And I was meeting a friend, and he was with someone. And it was this beautiful moment of we mutually saw each other, said hi, instantaneously had a flashback to that moment, probably went and told the other person we were with, like, oh my God, let me tell you a quick story about that guy. And then felt no need to do the whole how are you? How's it going? Blah, blah, blah. If he wants to get a hold of me, he can ask his mom anytime.
Well, this is the other thing. This is the other thing I need to ask. So how did that go down? Like, was she like, well, see ya. Do you want my email address? Like, what?
No. For whatever reason, I think it was whatever job I was doing at the time, my email address is pretty easy to find. And she found me down and she emailed me.
She Googled you.
She Googled
oh my goodness.
Me. Yeah, it was my old. She is one of only 5 reasons that I keep my OG Gmail account. The one that's just letters, my name. And
the one that you weren't thinking about having to send job applications via, so you just made up any old random crap.
Yeah. Yes. I have not heard from her in quite some time. I'm going to reach out to her probably today or tomorrow, see how she's feeling, see how she's doing, and then if I feel brave enough, be like, okay, by the way, I did just do this podcast. She'll get a kick out of it. She was the sweetest thing in the world. I wonder if she's still in New York.
Okay. So then how did you feel when you heard that 9th Avenue Saloon was closing?
Devastated. I didn't even hear it was closing. I just saw 2 weeks later a Facebook post, someone else posting on their Facebook page, so sorry you're closed for good. We'll miss you, blah, blah, blah. They did, unless I am missing something, there was no fanfare. They just kind of faded. Part of me hopes that maybe they're going to rebrand or restructure and form a new business in a post-COVID world. But from the whispers I've heard, it doesn't seem likely.
And then what did that venue teach you about yourself?
It definitely taught me to be in the moment. I know that sounds cliche, but it taught me to get out of my head. I mean, keep in mind, literally, I was in my head. I was very close when he started talking to me to be like, dude, I'm in no mood. Like, I came in here for a drink. I mean, I was that 21-year-old that might as well have been like 59-year-old barfly, like when I was in my prime. Like, I was 21, literally being like, my best friends are behind me. Like, I was such a little, Norma Desmond little queer. To get out of my head a little more. Be in the moment a little more. The supportive and lovely, beautiful generosity and kind spirit of the staff there has definitely influenced me as time has gone on, especially to people who are now in their early 20s or people that are in their 60s that are just coming out, in terms of their queer identity, to have a little more compassion, because I'm sure I was such a little annoying shit sitting at that bar, bitching about my audition problems, as there's probably like 30 out-of-work actors sitting in that bar at the same time.
In New York? No.
No.
Did you ever go to Ninth Avenue Saloon? Have you ever had an awkward one-night stand? Either way, I want to hear from you. Get in touch and let's have a chat about the show and where we should go to next on Lost Spaces. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find me with the username KAndersonMusic. You can also find Conor on those very same platforms. He unfortunately hasn't been able to secure the same username for each of his accounts, so I am going to post them in the show notes. Or you can also visit him on his website, conorkellyobrien.com. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record as well. I have been writing songs about queer venues and the people who used to live their lives there, and will be releasing songs over the coming year. You can hear the first single, Well Groomed Boys, which is also playing underneath my talking right now on all good streaming platforms. If you liked this episode, I would really appreciate if you subscribed, left a review on Apple Podcasts, or just told people who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen too. I am Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.